In 2009, a drilling crew in the north of Iceland was boring into the earth, hunting for heat. They expected to find rock. They expected to find steam. What they did not expect was to punch their drill straight into a pocket of living magma, molten stone hotter than 900 degrees Celsius, hiding far closer to the surface than anyone believed it possible. The drill came back destroyed. And instead of running away from the most dangerous thing you can find underground, the scientists did something that sounds like madness. They decided to dummy it. This is the story of Krafla, a volcano that people refused to simply live next to. They hitched inside it on purpose to pull out energy it was hiding. And it all starts with a simply, almost greedy idea. What if the hottest, most violent force on the planet could become a light switch on your living room wall? The land is a strange place when you think about energy. The island sits exactly on the border between two of the great plates that form the crust of our planet, right on the scene where the Earth is literally tearing itself in half. Because of that, Iceland is crowded with volcanoes, and, just as important, with heat rising almost all the way to the surface. For most of history, that heat meant fear. It buried farms, it poisoned the air, it erased entire villages overnight. But hey, when you manage to control it, is also the oldest power source there is. Boil water, make steam, spin a turbine, generate electricity. That is the basic recipe behind almost every power plant on Earth. Whether you are burning coal, splitting atoms, or, in Iceland's case, borrowing the heat straight from the ground. That has a name, geothermal energy. And Iceland became one of the great masters of that art. The Krafla region, in the north of the country, was a natural place to build. It is a restless volcanic zone, the king that never really sleeps. And just how restless it was, the engineers discovered in the most dramatic way possible. In the middle of the 1970s, right as construction on the plant was beginning, the volcano woke up. What followed was one of the most remarkable episodes in the history of energy, almost a full decade of activity, with the ground cracking open into fissures that spat curtains of lava, swarms of earthquakes shaking the region, and the floor of the caldera literally inflating and deflating, rising and falling like the chest of a breathing animal. Icelanders gave that period a name that sounds like a movie title, the Krafla Fires. Nieri comes the part that defines the spirit of these people. They did not abandon the construction site. They kept building the power plant. With the volcano erupting in the neighborhood, adjusting the plans after every scar, learning the hard way, where you could drill and where you could not. The plant came online with the ground still trembling, and it kept growing while the volcano slowly calmed down. Today it fed tens of megawatts into the grid, enough electricity for a whole region of the country, pulled directly out of a crater that was on fire while the foundations were being poured. In almost any other country, that sentence would sound like fiction. In Iceland, it was simply the construction schedule. The engineers drilled wells into the ground, captured the steam of the volcano, and built a machine that turned underground fire into clean electricity. For years, everything worked exactly as designed. Reliable, almost boring, in the best sense of the word. And the story could have ended right there, as an incident about a country using its volcanoes wisely, but the engineers wanted more. They wanted to go deeper, because there is a rule in geothermal energy that is brutally simple. The deeper and hotter you go, the more power you can pull from a single well. So they launched a project to drill far, beyond the normal depth, hunting for water so hot and so pressurized that it would carry several times more energy than ordinary steam. That is, when they hit the thing that was not supposed to be there. Before we get to what happened at the bottom of that hole, you need to understand the size of the bet. Deep drilling is expensive, it is slow, and the ground fights back. The deeper you go, the hotter and more corrosive everything becomes. Metal weakens, equipment fails, and any map of what lies beneath a volcano is, at best, a well-educated guess. Nobody truly knows what is down there until the drill tells them. The team believed they still had a few kilometers of solid rock ahead, scalding hot but solid. They were wrong. At around 3 kilometers down, far earlier than anyone expected, the drill suddenly broke through into something that was not rock at all. It was magma, molten stone glowing alive, forcing its way up into the well. The temperature was absurd, hot enough to ruin the tools instinct. Almost anywhere else in the world, hitting magma during a drilling operation would be a disaster, a reason to seal the hole and walk away without looking back. Magma is the raw engine of a volcano, which in filter. It is exactly the thing geologists spend trying to predict from a safe distance. Some these scientists just accidentally open edge a direct line to which the honest main reaction would be fear, and there was plenty of caution. But there was something else in the air too, something you can only call scientific hunger, because a wild thought started spreading among the researchers. If we have a pipe going straight down to magma, and magma is the most powerful heat source we could ever dream of, then what we have here is not a catastrophe. It might be the most powerful geothermal well ever created in human history. Think about the logic for a second. The entire point of geothermal energy is heating the heat. They just heat the ultimate heat, the source itself. So instead of sealing the hole, the team decided to study the well, to pump water carefully down toward that magma, and see what came back up. What came back was extraordinary. The steam rising from that well was far hotter than anything a normal geothermal well produces, superheated, more for 150 degrees Celsius. For a while, that accidental hole in the ground was the hottest geothermal well on the planet. In raw power, a single well like it that had the potential to produce several times the electricity of its neighbors. Roughly, what you would normally need many separate wells to generate. It was, in practice, a glimpse of an entirely new kind of power source. Chase geothermal anymore, magma power. Well, and this is the part that keeps this story from becoming a fairy tale. Taming a volcano is not that easy. The conditions inside that well were savage. The fluids coming up were not just hot, they were chemically aggressive, loaded with gases and minerals that eat through steel and clog machines. Over time, that brutal environment damaged the well, and it could not keep running as a permanent power plant. The dream well, the one connected to magma, had shown everyone what was possible, and then reminded everyone why it was so hard. It was like catching lightning in a bottle, and then watching the bottle slowly melt. So the engineers did what good scientists do after an accident they never planned. They started asking, what if we did this on purpose, designed for it from day one? The question grew into an even bolder plan. In other words, to build the first magma observatory in the world, and maybe one day, the first power plant on Earth running on magma itself, no longer an accident, a project. And that project stopped being an Icelandic dream and became a mission for the whole planet. Scientists from dozens of countries joined the conversation because what is at stake there matters to everyone. Energy side, the math is seductive. If one, while touching magma, can produce as much as many ordinary wells, a power plant of the future could generate the same electricity while drilling far less, using less land, and disturbing less of the landscape. Beyond the science side, there is a prize that might be even bigger. Today, every volcano on Earth is watched from the outside, with seismographs and satellites trying to guess the mountain's mood from symptoms. An observatory inside. The magma chamber would be like putting down the stethoscope and stepping directly into the patient's heart. The sensors living next to molten rock could teach us to predict eruptions with a precision that has never existed, and that could protect millions of people who live in the shadow of volcanoes around the world. The alley that was opened by accident in Krafla could end up becoming the fire alarm of the entire planet. While that future is still on its way, it is worth looking at what Iceland already does with the 88F. Almost all of the country's electricity comes from renewable sources, split between the power of falling water and the power of the underground. The vast majority of Icelandic homes are heated with hot water that comes straight out of the ground, without burning anything. There are greenhouses growing tomatoes and cucumbers with volcanic steam, one step away from the Arctic Circle. Sidewalks in the center of the capital that melted on snow, warmed from below by pipes of geothermal water. It is an interior country that took the force that deified its ancestors and turned it into everyday comfort. Someone asks whether it is worth insisting on the idea of thumbing a volcano. Iceland answers by pointing at his own daily life. I remember the idea from the beginning, that Chalmers' greedy dream of turning the most violent force on the planet into a switch on the wall. Krafla is the closest humanity has ever come to actually doing it, not with a sword but with a drill. Not by conquering the volcano, but by carefully, respectfully touching the edge of its power. You would be dishonest to promise that magma electricity will hate your city next year. It will not. The engineering challenges are enormous, the costs are high, and the risks of drilling near molten rock are real and serious. This is frontier science, the kind that fails many times before it works. But the Krafla accident proved something that sounds like fantasy. The energy is there, close enough to touch if we are smart enough, and humble enough to reach for it. And maybe that is the real lesson buried under that Icelandic volcano. For almost all of human history, the ground shaking and the mountain catching fire meant one thing only. He. Krafla is the story of a handful of people who stood on one of the most dangerous places on the planet, locked into the fire, and asked the differing question, not how do we escape this, but how do we plug into it. If you love the stories behind the world's most impossible feats of engineering, this is your own. Subscribe to Colossus build because the planet is full of raw, terrifying power hiding in plain sight, and we are here to show you the people bold enough and curious enough to try to reach it.